Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are now on the last session of the day of our first day of HR Week 2021. And just let me remind you as well, at the end of this session, so if you are an HR community member, if you already are an HR community member, you have the opportunity to continue this conversation with our speaker by simply going over to the HR World Cafe. Click on backstage, and that will take you directly, virtually, backstage to chat and to converse and to continue the conversation of our next speaker. Remember, only for HR community members, and that's what you can do straight after this session right now. So you'll agree with me that really tackling today's compelling challenges, we really need to radically improve our collaboration within and across organizations. Effective leadership teams act as agents of transformation, and they offer real opportunities for individuals, real opportunities for organizations to really do their part, do their bit in changing the world naturally for the better. Here to elaborate or to make sense of this for us on why and how we can build future-focused, brilliant teams together and leaders ready for our complex world is the founder of 6 Team Conditions, Ruth Wageman. Ruth, are you there?
I am indeed. Thank you, Peter.
Hello.
Appreciate the welcome.
How are you?
I'm very well today. I hope it's been a great day.
I believe so. From my side, it's been a great day. I assume, I get the feeling, the vibe, it's been a good day for the viewers as well. Can I quickly ask, where are you right now? Where are you coming? Where are you beaming from?
I am calling in from Phoenix, Arizona, in the western part of the United States. It's a
I guess
beautiful sunny day here, as
really?
always. Yeah.
What's the time over there? Is it early morning?
Yes, it's 8:45 in the morning. Yeah.
8:45 in the morning. You just start your day. We're coming to the end of the day, and you're going to bright up our day once again. Listen, Ruth, I'll hand it over to you at the end of the session. If there are any questions, I'll pop back in and ask those questions on their behalf. But for right now, take it away.
Terrific. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Great. So I am going to share the slides of my talk. Give me just a moment. Here we are. Great. So welcome, everybody. The premise of this talk, as Peter explained, is that we need brilliant teamwork at all levels of our organizations, from the front line to the top team. And what I want to do today is to share some observations of what commonly gets in the way of us having the great teams that we need. I'm going to base this on my research and that of Richard Hackman and our students and colleagues at Harvard and other universities. And I'll also share some observations of practice from working with teams and team leaders and of course, OD and human resources professionals from organizations around the world. And I really want to speak in the end to what and how the profession of human resources might do differently to radically increase the effectiveness of how the teams in our enterprises are supported and led. And I want to start with a little thought experiment. I'm going to start with a little question for you, and I'm going to offer a few of these questions throughout the talk. Feel free to add your comments or answer any of these quiz questions in the chat. What I'm drawing on here is the Cunningham framework, which would be familiar to many of you, that describes the degree of uncertainty about problems and solutions in our organizational environment. So are you right now, in the context of your organization, are you operating in what you would call a simple context, where it's pretty clear what the problems are that you're facing, what the solutions are to those problems, and it's just a matter of using simple routines to get those things done? Are you operating in a complicated environment where the cause and effect relationships may not be obvious, but in fact, you've got some expertise and you can sense and respond and take corrective action when you need to? Are you operating in a complex environment where the problems you face, the solutions that would address them, are hidden even to your experts, a space of emergent learning? Or finally, are you operating in a context that's actually chaotic, where we don't yet understand the cause and effect relationships that enable us to operate and lead our way through problems and taking advantage of opportunities? If you're operating in a simple context, congratulations. You can probably just sit back and enjoy this talk. I suspect that you probably said anything from complex to complicated to chaotic. And I want to characterize the context in which we are leading or developing leaders in our practice. And that is that the pace, the frequency, and the magnitude of changes that we are dealing all the time has accelerated and continues to accelerate. So we live in a world of pervasive disruption where there is interdependence of markets, of currencies, of technologies and ecosystems. So even if you're operating in a regional business, changes that are happening on the other side of the planet are creating threats and possibilities and opportunities for your organization that your leaders have to respond to. We need to be thinking both about delivery in the short term in order for our organizations to thrive and to be sustainable, but we also have to be able to learn our way forward for adaptation in the long run. Now, it turns out that processing this magnitude and pervasiveness of change, identifying all of the possible responses that we could make as an enterprise, aligning people around new solutions, leading change, this is more complex than any individual brain can possibly process, no matter how talented. So I don't want this to sound like it is any kind of indictment of modern leadership or a claim that we don't have the kind of leadership talent we need. It's fundamentally the case that the nature of what we are facing cannot be dealt with by individuals working alone, but great teams can actually do that. When you think about what it means when you have a highly interdependent team, great teams can imagine and co-create in very inventive ways possible futures that we could lead towards together. We can, when we're operating in teams, we can be paying attention to multiple things at once. We can scan more broadly. We're more likely to recognize things as threats and opportunities for our enterprise. In creative abrasion with each other, we're better able to formulate really smart, robust hypotheses, drawing on a wide range of talents. We're able to respond more quickly to changing conditions in the world, and we are better able to acknowledge emergence and innovate and invent ways forward. So that's all of the promise that we are offered by the potential of building really great teams from the front line to the top of the organization. What I want to do now is identify 3 very common tripwires that I have seen just in the last year of research and practice of exploring what gets in the way of us having the great teams that we need in enterprises. And then when I've identified these 3 tripwires and talked about what commonly goes on in our organizations that creates them, I want to talk a little bit about what we as professionals who manage the human resources of organizations can do to increase the chances that we will have all the brilliant teams that we need. So, tripwire number 1, we far too often actually create things in organizations that are teams in name only. How many things have you seen in your enterprise that are called a team that really are not actually groups of people who need to work together and exchange information and resources to get some common goal accomplished together? In fact, most of the time, the things that we call teams and organizations are actually just a function of people's titles, the organizational structure, or people's reporting relationships. They're often what I would call the unintended consequences of how we design organizations. So for good reasons, we're trying to build flatter and flatter organizations. We have fewer leaders. We assign, double digits of direct reports to our managers. And those managers then tend to think of those direct reports, quote, as their team, even if there are no real interdependencies among those team members. So as a consequence of the way that we design organizations, assign reporting relationships, the way that we create these clear reporting relationships so that feedback and performance management can be taken care of effectively in our organizations, creates an unintended consequence. And that is that many of our leaders think that they have to try to lead a, quote, team of often double-digit numbers. And what's the consequences of that? I want to show you some data from just what that looks like as a consequence for teams at the very tops of organizations, where the vast majority of our leadership teams are operating in double digits. And that is that outstanding teams that really are able to lead together are very rare indeed. So what I'm showing you are some data from our research about how well does a leadership team actually serve all of the many constituencies that it exists to serve? How well are they actually leading together? And are they actually getting better and better as leadership teams over time? And what we have found is that less than a quarter of the leadership teams out there are actually outstanding teams. In fact, the vast majority of them are teams in name only, and they're actually getting worse and worse in their ability to work together over time as the demands on them increase. They're becoming increasingly siloed rather than operating interdependently. So an interesting little quiz question, thought reflection for those of you who pay attention to leadership teams. On average, what proportion of the time do you think your leadership team is spending just in updating each other about what is going on in their area of the business versus doing real interdependent strategic work where they're using the full complement of talent to really work on the critical questions and problems facing the organization? Are they spending only 10% of their time in information sharing, between 10 and 40, between 40 and 50, or more than 50% of their time? And then the implicit question, of course, is how much of their time should they be spending on mere information sharing versus doing real consultation with each other and real collective work? And here's what we actually found in a sample of a couple of dozen teams just from this year alone. The vast majority of the time that our leadership teams are spending is just in presenting information to each other about what is going on in their specific areas of the business, rather than providing consultation to each other in order to bring their talent and their experience to the challenge each leader faces. Only 17% of their time spent in actually coordinating across silos in the organization. Even a smaller proportion of that is spent in joint decision making. And finally, very little of their time is actually spent in collective work. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit further about what it would take to undo that. I just want to reflect that we as professionals who have some impact on how organizations are designed and how teams are formed have the wisdom to know that when you put 19 people together and say, these 19 people are now going to try and operate as a leadership team, this is very likely what you're going to wind up with. A team that is so big that they cannot do anything other than manage their individual responsibilities and keep each other informed about what's going on in their individual areas. That's tripwire number one, creating teams that are teams in name only. Tripwire number two is an overemphasis on one-to-one leadership downward. So when we train and we develop and we select and we coach leaders in our organizations, we have a tendency to emphasize their excellence as coaches of the individuals who report to them, managing the performance and the effectiveness of those who are the reports, versus working together as a team member in collaboration with other leaders in order to co-lead the complexities of the enterprise. And we also have a tendency to focus on the leader as someone who manages the work processes of individuals and teams, rather than thinking about themselves fundamentally as the designer of the conditions that enable their teams to be effective. So let me speak to what I mean by being a team designer. Richard Hackman, who was my advisor, probably the greatest scholar studying teams and organizations ever, had this wonderful observation that once the actual work begins, team leaders have very little impact on the effectiveness of their teams. In fact, what really matters most is the intelligent preparations that leaders make before that team even exists. Here's an idea that came out of Richard's and my research that I want to share with you as a provocation to how you think about how you are developing leaders and how you are developing teams in your in your enterprise. What we've come up with is something that we call the 60-30-10 rule. This is a rule of thumb, a heuristic that says, what is it that your leaders should be putting their energy into? What really matters to the effectiveness of the collaborations that we have in organizations? And what we find is that about 60% of the really critical acts of leadership happen before the team even exists. It's in thinking through, do I even need a team in this situation? What kind of team do I need? How would I articulate a purpose that would be genuinely compelling to them? Who are the people that could actually contribute to that purpose? What resources will they need? How can I support their effectiveness together? And then 30% happens in the first time that the team actually convenes. It's getting the team off to the best possible start and getting the team onto a positive trajectory in the first place. Only 10% of what drives superb collaboration in our organizations is the real-time coaching that teams get once they have been launched and once that they are underway. Now, I think this idea has really powerful implications for what we are teaching our team leaders and what we are developing by way of team capacities in our enterprises. It really means focusing on developing our team leaders as a designer. So when we think about design, what does it mean? What does it actually take to have a great team? In our research, hence the name 6 Conditions, we've identified 6 designable features of teams that can be deliberately and intentionally put in place that greatly increase the chances that any team we have will grow over time into a truly superb performing unit. And we've divided those 6 conditions into 3 essentials, which really must be in good shape if we want to have good collaborations at all. And then 3 enablers, which accelerate the development of any team into a better and better performing unit over time. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on the contents of the actual 6 conditions. You're certainly welcome to visit me backstage if you want to dig into this further, but we've shared a lot of material in the common spaces here, and there's lots of things that we have published about the 6 conditions. I just want to name them and to underscore the idea that we can intentionally design our teams to be brilliant performing units by creating real teams that have compelling purposes and making sure that we choose people that contribute to those purposes. Give that team some fundamental elements of structure, like keeping it small and developing positive norms of conduct. Creating structures and systems that genuinely support teamwork rather than creating obstacles. And then finally, last in chronological order, providing that hands-on team coaching. And that's what we mean from this perspective about what team leadership is. Anyone who intentionally designs or puts in place and keeps these conditions in place over the life of the team is making a critical act of team leadership. So, Peter, I think you wanted to raise a question. Let me just raise one more tripwire, and then I'm happy to turn it over to you. One more reflection question for you in this quiz. What's rewarded and promoted in the leaders in your organization around how they lead their teams? Are leaders rewarded and promoted by creating clarity about what we are about to accomplish and then driving for those results? Are they selected, rewarded, and promoted to work well with their peers and to lead their teams to learn their way forward for the long run? Are you trying to promote both, or are they rewarded for neither of those things? And so that leads me to the final ones of these tripwires, which is that in the drive towards results and performance as sustainability, we unintentionally develop and reward leadership that communicates false certainty. And this is not something that we can afford right now. Our leaders cannot possibly know the answers to the complex problems that we are facing. What we need to be developing leaders who are clear about what a team exists for and why a team is actually needed, but that also welcomes and acknowledges uncertainty, unknowns, and helps to create the conditions for people to imagine, to test, and to learn their way forward together. Great. So now let's talk briefly about what we can actually do about that. One of the reasons that I am extremely hopeful and optimistic is that I have talked with easily a dozen, maybe 20 HR leaders in the last year alone who are well aware that we need to be creating organizations as healthy systems of teams, that we need to build and spread the knowledge of how to design and lead teams well, that we need to get better and better at measuring our organizational capacity for teaming, not just one team at a time, but knowing, are we pervasively building great teams throughout our enterprise? And finally, knowing that we need to select and develop and reward the ability to invite others in to figure out the future. So let me pause there, Peter. I saw that you had a question or a comment that you wanted to bring to the floor.
Well, no, in fact, it was literally time. We've come right to the end of your session, and I'm sure that there'll be questions for those who join you over backstage to continue the conversation further.
Happy to do that.
And meet you a little bit more as well, and as I say, extend this conversation a little bit more deeply as well. All that I have to say now is thank you so much. Some great ideas on really how to approach creating brilliant teams, because at the end of the day, that's what we're all involved with, and naturally we want to do it the right way. So I'm sure your insights have been really helpful as well. So thank you for your time and expertise, and enjoy the rest of your beautiful day over in the US.
Thanks, Peter.
Fantastic. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to almost the very end of our first day together, HR Week 2021, the first day all about strategic HR, and a few things for me certainly that have stood out. We started off with the future of work and Pim de Moray really highlighting some of those statistics and giving us a kind of flavor of really what people feel about work and the workplaces. And something that stood out for me as well was more than 40% and really finding it difficult in terms of the meaning of what they're doing at work, which certainly needs to change. Also, there seems to be a lot of focus on words like curiosity, empathy, listening, really touching or tapping into that emotional side, which maybe in some certain situations we need to do more of, but certainly, as we've already heard as well, many of us are already on the right track to that. We heard ideas about talent management, also creating engagement strategies as well, and pretty much everything in between. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed today, if you walk away now feeling like you've taken away some ideas, some insights, some food for thought, or just getting you thinking about something maybe you didn't think before and perhaps can take you forward, then our job is done for today. So if you've enjoyed today, guess what? We're going to do it all again tomorrow in the form of 20 more great sessions virtually online for you, but slightly different name, because we're jumping into people-centric HR, all about that theme, but we're sticking with the same vibe. It's going to be good, it's going to be intriguing, and you're going to walk away with lots of juicy ideas as well. So that all that leaves me now to say is thank you so much to all our speakers as well. Again, if you want to link up with them, find them on LinkedIn, look at what they have to offer, certainly on this platform as well, because there's lots of ideas on and lots of material on the podcast they're sharing in the HR library, and lots of other material as well. And one last shout out to the virtual audience that has been with me right in front of me throughout the day, every single session. They're a virtual audience. They're not real. As you can see, you can probably see them there. They're kind of twitching and shuffling and wiggling. They say nothing. They wear the same things. You'll see they'll be wearing the same clothes every single day, but I don't care because they're loyal and they're with me throughout the week. So join me tomorrow and the rest of the week as well. I'm real, you're real, and we'll be sharing some more great vibes with HR Week 2021. So good night or good morning, wherever you are, and we'll see you tomorrow, kicking off at 9 a.m. CET for the second day of HR Week 2021.